Would you give away your husband for family? Here's what I did. Welcome to our channel, where every story is a new journey. I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let's connect across the miles. And if you enjoyed today's story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We have another special story coming your way tomorrow, and I can't wait to share it with you. Thank you for being here. And until then, keep a little wonder in your heart. At 42 years old, I find myself reflecting on how easy it is to lose track of small things, like a few extra pounds when life gets busy and the seasons keep changing. Last year, somewhere between the hearty Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas cookies, and cozy winter nights, I indulged a little too much. When I finally stepped on the scale, it turned out I had gained about 11 pounds. Not catastrophic, but enough to make my jeans feel tighter and my energy levels noticeably lower. Now, with the holiday season approaching once again, I'm determined to get ahead of the curve. Instead of waiting until January and making another New Year's resolution, I decided to start now. The goal is simple: lose the extra weight before Thanksgiving rolls around. That way, I can enjoy all the festive treats guilt-free, knowing I've already put in the work. It feels like a smarter way to approach the season, a little gift to myself before the real gift-giving begins. Of course, the temptations are everywhere. Pumpkin pies, caramel apples, buttery mashed potatoes, everywhere. I turn. It feels like autumn is inviting me to celebrate through food, and Christmas isn't any easier. The idea of freshly baked cookies, rich holiday meals, and endless chocolate boxes is enough to make anyone abandon a diet in a heartbeat. Still, I'm keeping my focus. I remind myself that it's not about cutting out the joy, it's about finding balance. I want to indulge in the things I love without feeling like I'm starting from scratch in the new year. I'm choosing to see this as preparation, not punishment. Every time I opt for a healthier meal or take a brisk walk instead of skipping exercise, I imagine how good it will feel to enjoy the holidays without guilt weighing me down. And yes, Valentine's Day has already crossed my mind. There's something sweetly humorous about planning months ahead for chocolates I haven't even received yet. But that's life, isn't it? A mixture of planning and unexpected sweetness along the way. Looking back, every holiday season has its own story. Some years were full of joy, others bittersweet, and a few were downright chaotic. But through it all, the warmth of gathering, the laughter of loved ones, and the small rituals we repeat year after year have stayed constant. This year, I want to add a new chapter to that story. One where I feel stronger, lighter, and more present. So here's to new traditions, ones that honor both the body and the spirit. I may still reach for a second slice of pie come Thanksgiving, but I'll do it knowing that this time I started with intention, and I chose to take care of myself along the way. And honestly, that feels like something worth celebrating too. Lately, as I've been working on my health goals, I find myself reflecting not just on food and fitness, but on the bigger patterns that shape our lives, the choices we make, the relationships we build, and the unexpected twists that come when we least expect them. One memory in particular has been lingering in my mind, a moment that shaped me more than I realized at the time. It takes me back to when I was 22 years old, standing on the edge of what I thought would be a perfect future. I had just gotten engaged to Ethan, the man I loved and trusted completely. Our relationship had been steady and full of hope. Naturally, the next step was introducing him formally to my family. I was nervous, of course, but mostly excited. I imagined my parents would adore him, and that this meeting would simply be a joyful checkpoint on our path to marriage. And at first, it seemed to go exactly as I'd hoped. My parents welcomed Ethan warmly, smiling and nodding through dinner. But what I hadn't anticipated, the part no one could have warned me about, was my older sister, Chelsea. She was 25 at the time, working long hours at a corporate job she didn't particularly love, and still living at home. From the moment Chelsea walked into the room, fresh from work and still in her heels, I could sense the energy shift. She locked eyes with Ethan in a way that sent a small, sharp ripple of unease through me. At first, I brushed it off. After all, I trusted both of them. Family was family, right? Surely nothing could happen that would shake that foundation. But then during their first handshake, Chelsea clung to his hand just a little too long, her cheeks flushing a deep pink. She laughed a little too brightly at everything he said, leaning in closer than necessary, and giving him those long, dreamy stares usually reserved for movie characters, not your sister's fiancé. I told myself it was harmless, a silly crush, maybe, something she'd get over. Chelsea had always been a little dramatic, and I figured this was just another one of her fleeting fixations. It wasn't worth making a scene over. It wasn't worth stirring up trouble where, hopefully, there was none. But what I didn't realize then was that small ripples, left unchecked, can grow into waves. And sometimes the people closest to you can be the ones you least expect to test your loyalty, your patience, and even your dreams. As the night wore on, the tension in the air became almost palpable. I caught Chelsea sneaking glances at Ethan when she thought no one was watching. I noticed the way she laughed at jokes that weren't even that funny. And deep inside, a small knot of anxiety began to form, warning me that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't going to pass as quickly as I had hoped. At the time, I still believed I could navigate it gracefully. I believed love and trust would be enough to protect the life Ethan and I were building. I didn't yet know that this was only the beginning of a much larger storm brewing just beyond the horizon. In the weeks that followed that uneasy family dinner, I tried to convince myself that I had been imagining things. Maybe I was just overly sensitive. Maybe Chelsea's odd behavior toward Ethan was just a fluke, a moment of awkwardness she'd be embarrassed about and quietly move past. But deep down, I knew better. Every time Ethan came over to visit, Chelsea seemed to find an excuse to be around. She'd hover nearby, joining our conversations uninvited, laughing just a little too loudly, brushing past him in the narrow hallway with what felt like intentional closeness. Ethan, for his part, remained respectful but increasingly uncomfortable. One evening, after Chelsea had once again inserted herself into our plans with a, "Oh, mind if I tag along?" Ethan pulled me aside. "I don't know how to say this without sounding dramatic," he said, his voice low, "but Chelsea's behavior is getting weird." Hearing it from him, acknowledging the thing I had tried so hard to deny, sent a cold chill through me. It wasn't just in my head, it was real. Still, I clung to hope. I thought if I just kept things normal, if I stayed calm, the awkwardness would blow over. But instead, it got worse. Chelsea began questioning Ethan's loyalty behind my back, telling our parents in whispered tones that he might not be the right one for me. She had no proof, no reason, just vague accusations rooted in jealousy disguised as sisterly concern. And to my shock, my parents listened. They didn't confront me outright, but I noticed their warm smiles when Ethan visited began to fade. Subtle shifts, polite but distant greetings, shorter conversations, excuses to leave the room, painted a picture I couldn't ignore. Somehow, without realizing it, I had stepped into the middle of a silent, growing war inside my own family. When Ethan proposed we finalize the wedding date, I felt a bittersweet mix of excitement and dread. I wanted so badly to say yes, to move forward, to build the life we had dreamed about. But looming behind every decision was the shadow of my family's disapproval, silent, heavy, and entirely unjustified. I tried to bridge the gap. I sat my parents down one evening explaining how much Ethan meant to me, how happy he made me, and how important their support was to me. They nodded along, offering smiles that didn't reach their eyes, making vague promises of support without real conviction, and then came the night that shattered whatever hope I had left. 2 days before the wedding, I overheard a conversation I was never meant to hear. Chelsea, tearfully telling my parents she couldn't accept that her younger sister was getting married first, that she felt overlooked, betrayed, left behind. And worse, I heard my mother's voice, soft but clear, saying, "Then maybe it's best we don't go." Maybe that's the only way to make it fair. My heart cracked right there, standing in the hallway, listening to the people who were supposed to stand beside me choose silence, absence, and pity over celebrating my happiness. In that moment, everything became painfully clear. I would have to choose between clinging to a family that would never prioritize me, or stepping forward with the man who already had. The morning of my wedding arrived, but it didn't feel like the day I'd dreamed about since I was a little girl. Instead of waking up with butterflies and excitement, I woke up to a hollow feeling. In my chest, the weight of last night's conversation pressing down on me. My parents weren't coming. They had made their choice, and it wasn't me. When I walked into the venue, clutching my bouquet a little too tightly, I knew I would have to explain. Ethan's parents, already seated in the front row, looked at me with kind but confused expressions. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a smile. "My parents won't be attending," I said quietly. My sister didn't approve of the marriage. They chose to stay with her. For a moment, there was only stunned silence. Then Ethan's mother reached out and gently took my hand, squeezing it warmly. Ethan's father placed his hand on top of ours, his grip steady, reassuring. "You have a family. Here," his mother said softly. "Today is about starting your new life. Don't let anyone steal that from you." And with those few words, the tight knot in my chest loosened just enough to let me breathe. Ethan came to my side, brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. His smile, small but sure, anchored me. "I'm here, Lauren," he whispered. "I'm your family now." The ceremony moved forward. It wasn't grand or perfect, but it was real, filled with genuine emotion and a quiet, stubborn joy that no one could take away from us. But life, as it always does, had more surprises waiting. For 13 years, I built a life with Ethan. We bought a house, raised 3 wonderful children, and carved out a happiness that felt solid and unshakable. My parents never called. My sister never visited. It was as if they had cut me out completely, and honestly, I stopped expecting anything different. Until one afternoon, completely out of the blue, the doorbell rang. Standing on my front porch were my mother, my father, and Chelsea. They looked older, worn down, but somehow still carried that same air of entitlement, like they had every right to show up unannounced. Before I could even form words, Chelsea stepped forward, her expression bizarrely smug. "I have a favor to ask," she said sweetly, as if the last decade hadn't happened. My parents chimed in quickly, almost rehearsed. "It's something only you can do," my mother added, looking at me with a strange, pleading urgency. I crossed my arms, wary but curious. "And what exactly is that?" I asked. Their answer made my stomach turn. "We want you to give Ethan to Chelsea," my father said. The audacity, the sheer insanity of it knocked the breath out of me. I stared at them, blinking, waiting for the punchline. That never came. Chelsea just stood there, smiling like she already won. It was in that moment I realized this wasn't just about a wedding they didn't attend. This was about a lifetime of them never really choosing me. And now, more than ever, I knew I would never let them take what I had built. Not now. Not ever. I stood there for a long second, trying to wrap my mind around what I had just heard. They wanted me to give Ethan to Chelsea, as if he were an object, something to hand over like a second-hand gift. As if the 13 years we had built together, the life we had fought for, the family we had nurtured, could be erased with a simple favor. I felt Ethan step closer to me, his hand resting firmly on my back, steadying me. He didn't say a word, but the strength in his touch told me everything I needed to know. I took a slow breath and turned to face them fully. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice calm, colder than I had ever heard it come out. "You show up after over a decade of silence, not to apologize, not to make amends, but to ask me to give away my husband?" Chelsea didn't even flinch. She just smiled, tilting her head like she was the victim here. My mother and father exchanged nervous glances, but neither stepped up to correct her. Ethan and I are meant to be, Chelsea said, her voice soft, almost dreamy. You've already had him long enough? Isn't it time you let me be happy too? The absurdity of her words was almost laughable. Almost. I looked at Ethan, whose expression had shifted from shock to a barely contained grin. He squeezed my hand once, then turned to Chelsea. I've been waiting for this, he said dramatically, feigning a deep emotional sigh. Chelsea, I'm ready to quit my job, stay home with you every second of every day, and never leave your side. We'll be together, always. For a moment, Chelsea's eyes sparkled. Then Ethan added with a mischievous smile, I'll follow you everywhere, even to the bathroom. I'll depend on you for everything. No job, no income, just pure, undivided attention. Isn't that what you want? Chelsea's smile froze. She blinked, confused, the fantasy crumbling right in front of her. I didn't mean it like that, she stammered. Our parents shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing the nightmare scenario they had just helped create. I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the awkwardness. You're not taking anything. For me, I said. Not now, not ever. You made your choices and so did I. Chelsea's face twisted in anger. She started shouting, accusing me of being selfish, of ruining her life, of not understanding her pain. But her words didn't touch me anymore. They slid right off the walls I had built long ago, the ones forged in loneliness, betrayal, and, ultimately, freedom. With Ethan's arm wrapped around my shoulders, I simply turned and said, This is my family. You're not part of it. Then without a second glance, I closed the door in their faces. Inside, my children ran up to us, their laughter filling the room, grounding me in everything real and good. Ethan kissed the top of my head and whispered, You chose the right family. And, for the first time in years, I truly believed it, not because of the people who had left me behind, but because of the ones who stayed. Thank you so much for staying with me through today's story. Sometimes life tests us in ways we never expect, and standing up for your own happiness isn't always easy, especially when it means drawing lines with the people you once trusted the most. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced a moment where you had to choose yourself, even when it meant facing disappointment or disapproval from those closest to you? Or maybe you've witnessed someone you love have to make that difficult decision? Please share your story in the comments below. Your experiences, reflections, and even just your encouragement could mean the world to someone else who's listening today. And if you enjoyed this story or felt connected to it in any way, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. We have more heartfelt stories coming your way. Stories about resilience, family, and the power of choosing your own path. Can't wait to read your comments and continue this journey together. Thank you again for being here. Your voice matters,